Okay, and welcome back, everybody. I know some of you may be thrown off right now by my background. I'm kind of playing with this new um, little thing I found. So I'm going to try to match the background to each story that I talk about. Sound good? Plus, you can barely see my face. It's kind of cool. Kind of like it. Personally like it. So, in the spirit of Christmas, and I almost just said Halloween, that goes to show you where my mind's at. A long day. Merry Christmas, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. So today I want to talk about just some random history facts, some trivia, maybe find out where Christmas came from as far as why we celebrate it, maybe, or like when we started celebrating it, where we pulled it from. Um, because each religion has a different way of celebrating Christmas, and this is our way of celebrating Christmas. So let's delve into some of the history behind that. So this is the story about Christmas history, facts, and trivia. Oh, it's not necessarily a story. Learn why we kiss under the mistletoe, the commercial origins of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, whether Jesus was really born on Christmas Day, and more. So Christmas trivia and facts. I'll go over those photos after. Long before there was a Grinch who stole Christmas, there was Krampus, the devilish half-man, half-goat that helps out jolly St. Nicholas by stuffing naughty Austrian children in their sacks and dragging them to hell. Oh my god. This is the first time I'm reading this. Yes, the true story of Christmas is just as colorful as your neighbor's seizure, including house lit, including a house lit display. Learn more about the paganism origins of Christmas traditions and gather some fun trivia to share over a mug and expired eggnog. Over a mug of expired eggnog. Was Saturnalia the original Christmas? The ancient Roman festival Saturnalia was the most anticipated week on the Roman calendar, celebrated every December during the winter solstice, and paying homage to Saturn, the god of time and agriculture. Romans would take the week off from work, even the slaves. Wow. They don't even let workers who work regular jobs nowadays do that. It's crazy. Decorate their homes with pine wreaths, light festive candles, attend raucous parties and feasts, and exchange gifts and offerings. When the Roman Empire embraced Christianity, many of these traditions were carried over to the south. Were carried over. Many of these traditions were carried over to the celebration of Christmas. So it sounds like we get a lot of our traditions from the ancient Romans. Interesting. Didn't know that. But this is why I like doing stuff like this, because I don't know these things, and I don't think a lot of people do. People who are not Catholic, religious probably know this one. Was Jesus really born on December 25th? There's no solid evidence Jesus was born in December. In fact, his birth wasn't celebrated or even mentioned until centuries after the establishment of Christianity. Clues from the clues from the biblical account point to a spring birth, shepherds tending their flock, and it's likely that the Romans choose December 25th as the date to coincide with Saturnalia and convince the empire's remaining pagans to accept the strange new religion, which would actually make sense logically speaking. Hmm. Who was the original Santa Claus? The legendary figure of Santa Claus can be traced back to Saint Nicholas, a Turkish-born monk from the 3rd century who gained fame wandering the countryside helping the poor and sick. In Holland, Saint Nick is known as Sinterklaas, and the anniversary of his death on December 6th is a much-loved holiday. Dutch immigrants to New York brought Sinterklaas to America, where writers like Washington Irving penned entertaining tales of the angelicized Santa Claus. But the enduring details of Santa's story, the red suit, rotund belly, and reindeer reindeer pulled flying sleigh were popularized by the 1822 poem, an account of a visit from St. Nicholas, with its immortal first line, "'Twas the night before Christmas." Interesting. So, oh, you know what we have up here? Oh, so earlier when we mentioned Krampus, we'll come back to this, and this kind of explains who Krampus is. Actually, no, we'll just do it right now. So earlier when they said that Krampus was kind of like Saint Nicholas's, not alter ego, but kind of like counterpart. Every year in early December, children in Austria get ready for Saint Nicholas to visit them. But if they've been good, he'll reward them with presents, treats. If they've been bad, they'll get a lot more than a lump of coal. They'll have to face Krampus. Who's Krampus, you ask? He's half man, half goat, comes around every year to chase naughty children and maybe even drag them to hell. European versions of Saint Nicholas have long had scary counterparts like Belsnickel and Neck Ruperch. Ruperch. I don't know how to pronounce those. I apologize. Who dole out punishment. Krampus is one such character who comes from folklore in Austria's Alpine region, where he's been frightening children and amusing adults for hundreds of years. That's kind of fucked up. Tell your kids, if you're not good, Krampus is gonna come drag you to hell. That just shows how, like, you couldn't do that in America because the children here are way too sensitive. And so are the parents. Krampus and St. Nick, other bad boys, have their origin in pagan celebrations of the winter solstice. Sorry, guys, I don't have my contacts on, so it's kind of hard for me to read this, so I do apologize. I should have said that beforehand. They became part of Christian traditions in which St. Nicholas visited children to reward them on December 5th or 6th. Around that time, his menacing partner would also visit kids to punish them. In Alpine Austria, some parts of Germany, this day was also known as Krampusnacht or Krampus Night. So I guess that first word is like German. So we'll call it Krampus Night. When adults might dress up as Krampus to frighten their children at their homes, it's so fucked up. Children might have seen Krampus running through the streets during Krampus Night. Literally a Krampus run. If Krampus Night was a way to scare kids into behaving themselves, the Krampslauf, which isn't tied to a specific day, was a way for grown men to blow off steam while probably still scaring kids. Austrian men would get drunk and run through the streets dressed as the fearsome creature like Krampusnacht. The Krampuslauf tradition continues to this present day. Those are German words, so you can't expect me to be able to read those that well. So I apologize. The introduction of mass visual media couldn't help but sweep the charismatic Krampus up in its wave. When the postcard industry experienced a boom in Germany and Austria in the 1890s, it opened the way for Krampuskarten. These holiday cards were meant to make you feel warm and fuzzy. One's marked Gruß von Krampus, greetings from Krampus, in parentheses, showed Krampus stuffing a distressed child into a satchel or preparing to hit one with his bundle of birch sticks. Many of these postcards depicted Krampus going after children with his sticks, leading them away in chains or carrying them off in a bag. That's so fucked up. There were also cards that were a little more adult. Krampus in the cards early 20th century show him punishing children, yes, but also proposing to women. In some cards, Krampus portrayed as a large woman whipping tiny men with her birch sticks and carrying them off in a satchel. And other smiling woman dangles a defeated-looking Krampus in the air, holding his bundle of birch sticks behind her back. You can draw your own conclusions about the gender politics of these. Oh, man, that's funny. So, for over a century, most Americans probably never saw a Krampus card or even knew who Krampus was. That changed in 2004 when an art director, graphic designer Monte Beauchamp published a book, Krampus Cards, and helped organize an art show inspired by the cards. And that just goes on to talk about like that guy who created it. It's not really that big of a deal. That's really interesting. All right, so now before we went on to that tangent, we went on and we had just read who was the original Santa Claus, and we had read this. So from here, we're gonna go and we're gonna read this, which is Santa Claus. All right, Santa, we don't need you down there. Unless that turns into an ad, I guess we don't need you there. Just check this out real quick. Oh, Jesus Christ, that's not too bad. All right. Santa Claus, otherwise also known as Saint Nicholas or Kris Kringle, has a long hit. Oh, actually, if you watch any of the old school Santa Claus movies with Tim, I almost said Tim Burton, but Tim Allen, he also plays Kris Kringle. Has long history steeped in Christmas traditions. Today, he is thought of mainly as the jolly man in red who brings toys to good boys and girls on Christmas Eve. But his story stretches all the way back to the 3rd century when St. Nicholas walked the earth and became patron saint of the children. Find out more about the history of Santa Claus from his earliest origins to the shopping mall Santas of today, and discover how New Yorkers Clement Clark Moore and Thomas Nast were major influences on Santa Claus. Millions of children wait for each year. So we won't go through that part of it because that's not really that important. But the legend of Saint Nicholas, the real Santa Claus. The legend of Santa Claus can be tracked back hundreds of years to a monk named Saint Nicholas. It is believed that Saint Nicholas was born sometime around 280 A.D. in Pteria near Myra. In modern-day Turkey, much admired for his piety and kindness, Saint Nicholas became the subject of many legends. It is said that he gave away all of his inherited wealth and traveled the countryside helping the poor and sick. One of the best-known Saint Nicholas stories is the time he saved 3 poor sisters from being sold into slavery and prostitution by their father by providing them with a dowry so that they could be married. I don't know what a dowry is. Maybe some of you do, so you'll enjoy whatever that is. Anyway, over the course of many years, Nicholas' popularity spread and he became known as the protector of children and soldiers. His feast day is celebrated on the anniversary of his death, December 6th. So what we should be doing from now on, guys, is having the big dinners on December 6th, not the 25th. This was traditionally considered a lucky day to make large purchases or get married. Good to know. Good to know. I'm going to buy scratch tickets in large amounts. By the Renaissance, St. Nicholas was the most popular saint in Europe. Even after the Protestant Reformation, when the veneration of saints began to be discouraged, St. Nicholas maintained a positive reputation, especially in Holland. Okay, so Santa Claus comes to New York, which we just talked about earlier. St. Nicholas made his first inroads into American popular culture toward the end of the 18th century. In December 1773 and again in 1774, a New York newspaper reported that groups of Dutch families had gathered to honor the anniversary of his death. The name Santa Claus evolved from Nick's Dutch name Sinterklaas, a shortened form of Saint Nicholas, which maybe that's a typo. It should say Saint Nicholas, but it says Saint Nicholas. Dutch for Saint Nicholas. In 1804, John Pintard, a member of the New York Historical Society, distributed woodcuts of Saint Nicholas at the Society's annual meeting. The background of the engraving contains now familiar Santa images, including stockings filled with toys and fruit, hung over a fireplace. In 1809, Washington Irving helped to popularize the Sinterklaas stories, where he's referred to as Saint Nicholas as the patron saint of New York in this book. The history of New York as his prominence grew. Santa Claus was described as everything from a rascal with a blue three-cornered hat, red waistcoat, and yellow stocking, to a man wearing a broad-brimmed hat and a huge pair of Flemish trunk hose. A huge pair of Flemish trunk hose. I don't know what that is. Shopping mall Santas, that's kind of dumb. That's just talking about you bringing your kids to the shop mall. You don't even really need to go about that. Okay, so this one right here, last one we'll talk about is how we got the image of Santa Claus. In 1822, Clement Clarke Moore, an Episcopal minister, wrote a long Christian poem for his three daughters entitled An Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas, more popularly known as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. That right there rhymed. Moore's poem, which he was initially hesitant to publish due to frivolous nature of its subject, is largely responsible for our modern image of Santa Claus as a right jolly old elf with a portly figure and the supernatural ability to ascend a chimney with a mere nod of his head. Although some of Moore's imagery was probably borrowed from other sources, his poem helped popularize the now familiar image of Santa Claus, who flew from house to house on Christmas Eve in a miniature sleigh, led by 8 flying reindeer to leave presents for deserving children. An account of a visit from St. Nicholas created a new and immediately popular American icon. Thank you, buddy. In 1881, political cartoonist Thomas Nast drew on Moore's poem to create the first likeness that matches our modern image of Santa Claus, which is the guy off to our right that I've left up. His cartoon, which appears in Harper's Weekly, depicted Santa as a rotund, cheerful man with a full white beard, holding a sack laden with toys for lucky children. And it is Nast who gave Santa his bright red trimmed with white fur North Pole workship elves and his wife Miss Claus. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. This just goes on to talk about Santa Claus around the world. Just talking about basically where they go off in Russia. I'll leave this on the screen for a sec so you guys can pause and actually, you know what? Right here, pause it there, and then you can pause it there and read it. So there's that. Now this last one that I leave up, we're gonna go down, I think, a little bit more on this one. I'm not too positive. Let me see. Oh, all right, Yule log. All right, so the Yule log is going to go into our next thing, and then see. Why do we kiss under the mistletoe? The custom of stealing a Christmas tree under the the custom of stealing a Christmas kiss under the mistletoe has its clearest connection with Norse mythology, in which Frigg, the goddess of love, promised to kiss any creature that passed beneath the evergreen sprig, after it was used to revive her son Balder from the dead, which Balder, if you guys don't know, is unkillable. Anybody who plays God of War knows that. From the dead. After initially killing him, the Celtic Druids also saw mistletoe, which blossoms in the winter, as a sacred symbol of viscosity. Well, I don't know what that word is, and prescribed it for fertility issues. The modern tradition of meeting under the mistletoe stayed in England and has won over superstitious smooches worldwide. So what that says basically is that, like, if you're having fertility problems, it's good to kiss under a mistletoe. And it's used because that's one of the that was one of the things used to bring this lady's son Baldur back to life. That's pretty cool. A wrong number called to NORAD launched the Santa tracker. In 1955, at the height of the Cold War tensions, which the Soviet Union, a general at the Continental Air Defense Command, CONAD, in Colorado, received a call on top a secret hotline, bracing himself for news of a missile attack. The general instead heard the shaky voice of a young boy asking, "Are you really Santa Claus?" The number had been mistakenly published in the newspaper as a Sears Santa hotline, but instead of dismissing the incident, CONAD renamed the North American Aerospace Defense Command in NOAD in 1958 embraced the rule as the official Santa tracker, using its massive satellite network once a year to broadcast Santa's exact whereabouts. Today, 1,500 NORAD troops and volunteers answer the phone lines on Christmas Eve. Aw, ain't that so cute and so nice? See, there is hope. Oh wow, this shit's a lot more. Fucking have more stuff than I thought. Alright, two more things. What other important events have happened on Christmas Day? Late on Christmas Day, 1776, George Washington led the Continental Army across the icy Delaware River in a surprise attack on the British forces. Charlemagne, the father of Europe, was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III. On Christmas Day in the year 800 AC, the Treaty of Ghent, officially ending the War of 1812, was signed on Christmas Day. 1814, and the Apollo 8 crew orbited the Moon for the very first time on Christmas Eve. 1968, signing off their live TV broadcast with the memorable "Merry Christmas and God bless all of you on the good earth." All right, and then the other one is "When Christmas Stopped the War." On December 7th, 1914, 5 months into the outbreak of fighting into World War I, Pope Benedict XV called for a temporary ceasefire during the Christmas season. Military leaders on all sides ignored the request, but the troops in the trenches responded. As night fell on Christmas Eve, sounds of Christmas carols began ringing out in German and English across no man's land. The next morning, unarmed German soldiers approached the British lines shouting "Merry Christmas." They were met with hearty handshakes, gifts, and chocolates and cigarettes in a spirited game of soccer. The so-called Christmas truce was short-lived and never repeated, but it speaks to our shared sense of humanity, even in the darkest of moments. That's fucking wow. I'm glad I read that. I'm really glad I read that. Merry fucking Christmas, huh? So the last thing I wanted to point out about the interesting parts of Christmas is that when you go into other lore, like Vikings, the Viking Yule, how Vikings celebrate Christmas. Now, I chose to go with the Vikings because they're the most animalistic people, and even they celebrated these things. And it was kind of interesting because one of the things that they mentioned, we actually kind of stole and used today. So this is a short read, and then we're going to wrap it up. How the Vikings celebrate their Christmas. Okay. We might know the Vikings had festivals resembling Halloween. It is the Alphabol and the Disabol. I'm sorry that I'm so terrible at reading, guys. Words that I don't know. The Vikings also celebrated a festival known as Yule. The Viking Yule celebration was similar to the modern Christmas. In fact, customs and traditions for modern Christmas stem from Yule celebrations of the Vikings. Yule, or pronunciation Yule, but we're going to call it Yule, was a time between winter solstice and the Yule sacrifice, Jalabit, so the celebration was likely to last from winter solstice to the 12th day of January. Generally, the celebration included drinking, feasting, songs, games, banquets, and sacrifices for the gods and ancestors' spirits. Interesting. The Viking had their Yule tree. This is it right here. The Viking had their Yule tree, which inspired the later Christmas tree. The green tree was often decorated with small statues of the Norse gods, food, and clothes. they attempted to call the spirits of the forest. A Yule wreath appeared in the Yule celebration, but it was a giant wheel, and the Vikings would set a big wreath on fire. They threw it down the hill to wish for the return of the sun. It was theorized that the Yule wreath was the ancestor of the Christmas wreath on the door. Wow, that's interesting. Yule log was one of the traditions of the Viking Yule. It was a log with fur. They carved the runes on the oak to wish for the protection of the gods. The Viking would save a piece of the log for the next year's fire in their house. It was for protection purposes. Wow. So they would take this piece of oak and type of oak tree, and then they would carve it and then take a piece of that wood and then burn it in next year's first fire in their house. That's kind of cool for protection. That's interesting. The Yule goat was also one of the most important parts of the Viking Yule. The Viking Yule goat was related to a pair of goat belonging to the Thor god of thunder and lightning in Norse mythology. A pair of goat of Thor pulled, or a pair of goat of Thor pulled the chariot through the sky, making the sound of thunder. So basically, Thor would be on a chariot, and it would be of these two of these goats pulling it, making the sound of thunder. They could have wrote that a little bit better. It was believed the Viking young men often dressed the goat skin, going from house to house and singing along in return. Let me read that again because that's called caroling nowadays. It was believed that Viking young men often dressed the goat skin, I should say dressed in goat skin, in the goat skin, going from house to house and singing along. In return, the young men would get a reward like food and drink. The Viking had a Santa Claus for themselves too. One person would dress himself to represent the old man winter. The Vikings would always welcome the old man to their home and join them in the feasts. He wore a hooded cloak, traveling around. Sometimes he walked, sometimes he rode a horse. Many theorized that the Yule Old Man was actually Odin, and the horse he was riding was Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse of Odin. And that just happens to be the eight reindeer that pull the sleigh nowadays, supposedly. You know what I mean? So that's just some North mythology and mixed in with some of our own ways that we celebrate Christmas. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Those were a lot of words I didn't know, so I apologize. This was a random podcast, wasn't planning on doing it, but I hope that you all enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed the background too. I have some cool space background, so next time I talk about UFOs, there's gonna be some kind of cool worldly outer worldly stuff back there. So I hope you enjoyed what you listened to. Please like, please share, and leave me comments below, questions, concerns, anything you'd like to know. I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you for tuning in. So see you guys next time.